Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Kilgar. I'm the managing editor for Feed and Grain and the host of the Feed and Grain podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today as we dive deep into the issues affecting the feed manufacturing, grain handling, and allied industries. Today, I'm once again talking to Jess McClure, Vice President of Safety and Regulatory Affairs at the National Grain and Feed Association, also known as the NGFA, and Joe Milnick, content creation expert and partner at Safety Made Simple and a consultant at NGFA. This is the second podcast with Jess and Joe, and this time we're discussing grain dryer safety and maintenance, along with NGFA's commitment to safety education and where to find safety education materials for you, your employees, and your customers. Before we start, if you're listening to this in podcasting app, please rate us and subscribe. If you're listening online, sign up for the Feed and Grain newsletter, Industry Watch, to see the latest podcast and stay up to date with all the latest news from around the industry. Now, on to the show. I was going through when I was preparing for this interview. Podcast listeners, I do prepare every time. But I was going through NGFA's website, and you guys had a really great video that had recently been reposted to the top. I think you made it a few years ago, but really important for this, NGFA's safety and grain quality management video. Can you talk a little bit about what's in this and why you guys would recommend kind of people going and at least watching this to get a refresher on, how to properly manage grain quality?
Sure. I think this really, what Joe has just described, that process for maintaining the quality, it really talks about that step by step, and it also has the animation to go with that. And so it's designed not only for grain elevator employees, but it's also designed for farmers. And really, while there's, I would say, no silver bullet for monitoring and managing grain and storage, there's certain steps that I think everyone recommends. And just as Joe described, it's preparing the grain bins, drying the grain to proper moisture content, optimize aeration, controlling the temperature, and checking the grain frequently. So that's, I would say, the primary outline of the video, what it addresses. And then if you go on to our website, ngfa.org/safety, you can have the opportunity to view it and see those steps that I talked about in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, it's a great thing to send to your co-op members or your grain elevator customers. If you have a newsletter, have a link. Send people that way, because that's sharing information is how we ultimately save lives. So, really important. So, we talked about the grain bin itself. The other big issue this time of year is grain dryer fires, especially with high moisture grain. Can you talk a little bit about both how grain dryers contribute to preserving grain quality, why they're important, and then what hazards do they actually introduce into the process?
Yeah, so as far as the quality, grain dryers address moisture content, so that preserves the grain during storage. So grain that's generally stored at high moisture and temperature will spoil fast, so it goes pretty bad. The best comment I ever heard about grain was actually at the NGFA convey several years ago, and a quality expert said, once you put grain into a bin, the quality is not going to get any better, but we can preserve and prolong the life of it while it's in the bin. So drying really prevents microbial growth, which can result in mold and those types of things, and then in turn will increase the storage life. But as far as potential hazards, two come to mind, and one is grain dryer fires, which probably most of the listeners have seen pictures of those. I've had a number of clients that have had those over the years. And you can also have smoldering grain that could possibly enter into a grain storage structure, which is never a good thing because that can cause fires in bins and also consequently explosions and types of things.
Yeah, can you go a little more in depth about the common causes of dryer fires, issues like plugging, grain flow, mechanical failures? Yeah. What should people be on the lookout for?
Sure. Plugged grain flow can result in smoldering grain or even foreign material in the grain within the dryer. So this can result in a dryer fire or transfer of that smoldering or hot grain to a storage bin. So plugged grain is really the first thing. There's some things we can do about that to prevent those types of things. But you can also have mechanical failures within the dryer itself, whatever that might be. It could be like the grain metering system or the unload system, which is generally going to be augers or drags. That can also lead to grain dryer fires as well.
Would you recommend just kind of a start of the season maintenance overview of your grain dryer, especially if you're on a farm and maybe it doesn't get used quite as often?
Preventive maintenance is really important. Again, I'll refer back to the NGFA safety tip sheets. They have the one that's on grain dryer fires, really focuses in on a couple different things. But we know that preventive maintenance, probably there's a lot of important things we need to do from a safety perspective at a grain elevator. But this, to me, it's one of the most important things is going to be preventive maintenance. So a good PM program can reduce the potential for grain dryer fires and downtime. And you want to make sure that's important, especially when you're in the thick of it in the middle of harvest. But the NGFA safety tip sheet hits the mark when it comes to grain dryer fires. It's right on point. One of the things it talks about is to have an annual inspection that would be maybe from a manufacturer or even a dryer service provider. So I know in August, I was in the state of Michigan, and one of my clients had an inspector out that was going through all of their dryers before season started. There's also some pre-startup dryer maintenance as well. I'm not going to go into all the detail on that safety tip sheet on the NGFA website. And then we have routine dryer maintenance. So that's really developing a cleaning schedule. And what the cleaning and the housekeeping efforts are really focusing on are fines that are on the floor and the screens, which can reduce the airflow. And that accumulation affects airflow within, the columns and the grain dryer. Now, it's recommended by most manufacturers that you would clean those probably every 24 hours of operation. However, best practice would be maybe cutting that in half and going with 12. And then there's also extended shutdown maintenance. If you're going to be shutting down dryers for a period of time, that you'd have some maintenance during that period of time. It's simple things like making sure that the burner's covered with a tarp and those types of things as well, cleaned out on a regular basis. So I would also mention too, and just add in there, I think that dryer fire response and having a plan is important. I've written a blog on this before, but making that part of the emergency action plan. So how do I respond to a grain dryer fire at my facility? What is the procedure for shutdown, draining the columns? What type of personal protective equipment do people need to wear when they're doing that? How to isolate the gas flow, all those different types of things. So I had a client years ago that down in Louisiana that had a grain dryer fire. And when they had me on site, they said, could you put together response procedures for all these? And I said, sure. And I learned a lot. Each manufacturer has kind of a different procedure. This company had a bunch of different style dryers, different manufacturers. And it took some time, but afterward, we were in a much better position to train not only our employees, but also have the responding fire departments out to talk about that type of thing happening at the facility and how they would address it. When they had their fire department really didn't know anything about it. And the best way to get to know your fire department is before something bad happens. So I would encourage people as well to have a dryer fire response plan as part of their emergency action plan.
Very true. Always the best time to really get all this in place is before it's happening. You never want to be caught
Absolutely.
with no plan, for regulation purposes, if nothing else. How does NGFA plan to continue sharing safety resources? You guys have been doing a great job of it, and you're expanding it all the time. What are the plans for grain quality and safety features in the future? Are you going to cover this more on the website?
The information that we have, and as Joe mentioned, we have safety tip sheets and videos on these topics, and they're available on our website free of charge. So it doesn't matter if you're a member of NGFA or if you're not, it's still available. We have tip sheets, we have recorded webinars, we have interactive training courses, guidance documents. We have a wide range of items on our website that members can utilize. We also will put information on a newsletter, as you may have seen. We had an article about this. We're also going to be having an article about this very topic that'll be in Feed and Grain in the upcoming issue. There's also, I would say, we address this types of issues as we're talking about engulfment prevention and grain quality. They're also addressed during Harvest Safety Week and Standards for Grain Safety Week. So wide range of venues that we have, whether it be in person, whether it be online, whether it be publication. We utilize those resources to get this information out. And if you have any questions about this, please feel free to contact myself, or as Joe mentioned, he's a new member of the NGFA team. So if you want to contact Joe about that as well, and look forward to some of the new projects that he'll be working on that might be addressing some of these topics as well. We'll keep everyone lingering to wait and see, but that is something that come down the pipe later on.
Keeping me in suspense. I'm also looking forward to seeing what you guys and Joe produce. Especially Joe. He's going to come back on the podcast and talk about it. I'm going to make him. So where can listeners find more information and resources on the topic at their website? I think there's a special area for it.
Yeah, so if you go to ngfa.org/safety, and in fact, one of our featured videos right there on the safety section of our webpage that you can look at talks about grain quality and safety. So it's an animated video that we have on there, and then you can also, so tabs there that you can click on to go. Joe was talking about our safety tip sheets. So links or tabs, I should say, to our webinars, our interactive courses, guidance documents, all of that is available. And I would say all of the material in the safety section of our webpage, about 90% of that is free of charge that you can download if you would like. Certain items we have on there, such as other safety videos and some of our publications, there's a charge for it, member, non-member, but as I said, a majority of it is free of charge.
Great service to the industry itself, because everyone wants everyone to go home safe at the end of the day, whether they be customers or employees. So it's really important, and it's great that you guys share that all for free. I encourage everyone to go check it out and see what you can download for your own staff, download for your customers, hand out, make sure everyone is getting this information. Well, Jess, Joe, thank you so much for coming on today. Really important topic, and I'm really glad that we got a chance to discuss it.
Well, Steve, thanks for the invitation. Great chatting with you too.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep, and thank you everyone for listening.